You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
CRM was supposed to improve customer relationships. Instead, it's shorthand for Customer Rage Machine. Your CRM can't explain why a customer's package took 5 detours? Reboot your inner peace and scream into a pillow. It's okay. On the ServiceNow AI platform, CRM stands for something better. AI agents don't just track issues, they resolve them, transforming the entire customer experience. So breathe in and breathe out. Bad CRM was then. This is ServiceNow.
Hello and welcome to Her Way, the podcast. It's Martin here, and you join us the morning after, the day before, as after 8 years, 2 months and 27 days, Premier League football returned to the Stadium of Light as Sunderland took on West Ham United. And what a return it was. We got our first Premier League opening day win since 2009, and the first at the Stadium of Light since Roy Keane's team beat Spurs in 2007. So it really was a historic day. So there's loads to get stuck into, and I've got a couple of people to help me go through everything surrounding the game and all of the action from yesterday. And first up is a man who's normally behind the mic here in the host's chair. It's Gavin Henderson. How are you, mate?
I don't know how I am, to be honest. I'm looking forward to this because, when I recorded yesterday, it was bang on full time and I was all over the place. So I'm hoping I can be a little bit more coherent today and talk about this. But good, mate. Very good. I can't have asked for a better morning to wake up and Sunderland to be 3 points better off in the Premier League.
I literally woke up this morning and I thought, was that a dream? I literally had to check because
you pinch yourself and is this real?
It was like, did that really happen? So yes, it's a lot of it was the stuff that dreams were made of. And also joining myself and Gav today is a well-known name in the Sunderland press pack, making his first appearance on How We're the podcast this season is James Hunter. How are you, James?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. This is an early Sunday morning call. This is, I should be at church. I feel I should be at church.
I am actually going to church after this, by the way. Just to let everybody know. That's why we're recording. So, yeah. Not that I'm a regular in church, by the way. I'm getting married in one. We're getting my bands read today. So it's my fault you're up this early, James.
That's quite all right. Well, congratulations in advance.
Yeah. I'm gonna. Yeah, we'll see. She might run away by then.
Well, I tell you, if there's one day to go to church and say a bit of thanks, it's this morning, I think. Yeah. And James, you were at the match yesterday?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Fantastic experience. It's been such a long road for Sunderland to get back to the Premier League. I think you just saw the explosion of joy and of delight and what have you from the fans. I think that was clear even before kickoff, and then by the time you get to the end of that incredible first game back, it was. I think fans probably floated back across the bridge towards the city centre, didn't they?
Were you floating, Gav?
Oh, just I walked out the ground and it was like. I don't know. I don't think I've had many feelings like that ever as a Sunderland fan. I mean, Coventry was like that for different reasons because we knew we were going to Wembley and everybody's bouncing. But like that, I mean, I didn't realise, Martin, until you said it at the top there. That's the first time we've won at home in the opening day since we beat Spurs in the Premier League. So I didn't realise it had been that long, and. You kind of forget what that feels like to a degree because, I mean, that Spurs game, we still talk about it, don't we, as such a momentous day. Like, that wasn't a great season, but that opening day when Chopra scored and the place was going mental at the end of the game and stuff, we still talk about that. And I think people are going to be talking about this for many, many years to come. It was amazing walking out the ground and just seeing everybody buzzing, people cuddling and jumping. Like, we've waited a long time for a feeling like that. And, you know, for me, walking out the ground, I just couldn't believe it. I was walking around thinking, I was just delirious, to be honest. You know, sweaty and warm because we'd been jumping all over the place. And, you know, just, it was like a sea of bodies everywhere. I mean, great again, by the way, to see so many people at the games, coming out the ground and seeing like almost, you know, an extra 10, 15,000 people who were enjoying the occasion and stuff. But yeah, floated out of the ground. I was trying to make me way to the Hilton to meet the lads to record the reaction pod. And it must have took us 20 minutes just to get through the sea of bodies. But I think it gave us time to kind of come to terms with what I'd just seen.
And from a fan's perspective, like we've had the last 4 competitive games that we've played, Coventry away, Coventry at home, the playoff final, and then this game. Each one in different ways is almost like a generational game. It's a generational experience. And we've had 4 of those back to back. And, you know, if you couldn't have written that script better for yesterday, you could, like, the way the game panned out, the atmosphere before the game, you know, the roar of the players coming onto the pitch, the Lambton Worm tifo that came down, and like, it was just, you couldn't have written it. Like, honestly, if somebody had put that in the Netflix script, they would have said, "Oh, piss off, man! You can't make that up."
Yes,
it's just it's unbelievable.
Oh, before the game, I was thinking, well, you know, deep down, I'd probably be all right with a draw. If you can get a draw in your first game, you've got a point on the board. You know, West Ham, I was looking at their squad in the preview when we were doing the preview with the lads, and I'm going, you know, Brazil international centre midfielder, England international centre midfielder, England international striker, German international striker. You know, a team that probably cost 200 million to put together. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, you know what? Even though West Ham aren't one of the better Premier League teams, they're still a canny team. They've got talent, and I would take a point. I never saw that coming. Never saw it. You know, but even then, though, when you got to the morning of the game, everyone was buzzing for the game just to get underway. Everyone's like dying to get there. And I said this in my piece on the website that I wrote last night, that, you know, it just felt like it was going to be our day. A bit like Coventry again. That Coventry game, when I knew when I went to the ground, I was like, it's just going to be our day. There's too much positivity in the air for this not to go our way. And it was like that again. So really, you know, even though I didn't see it coming, I probably should have, because I think it's that we've all got that little demon in our chest who's like trying to drag us down. You know, we've got that inner pessimism. Sunderland fans have got that. It's there. It's always going to be there. Whether you're the most positive Sunderland fan, the most negative Sunderland fan, you've always going to have this thing in your heart which is telling you, you know, don't get too carried away. Don't, you know what it is? This team, this manager, this setup is so different that you shouldn't have that. You should kind of park all of that, all those scars from the past. You should park that to one side and be like, Sunderland are very different now, and we probably should stop underestimating them, because they keep finding new ways to surprise us and give us joy and bring these moments to us. But as a fan experience, you're right. The last 4 games, I've never had a better run watching Sunderland. And I've been going for 20 odd years, and, you know, for me, that's as good as it's been.
James, last time we had you on the podcast, it was the day after we played Millwall at home. I think we got beat 3-0 away at Coventry. We'd had the international break. We came back to the stadium light. We played Millwall, won 1-0. Playoffs were fairly secure. And I listened back to some of our podcast earlier, and I think Gav, being Mr. Positive, he was quite confident of going up through the playoffs. I think you said your gut said no, but your heart said yes. And then I sat completely on the fence when I listened back to it. But you know, even if you think back to that point, so what we're talking, 3.5, 4 months ago, I was going to say transformation, but it's not really transformation, because it's been the development and the built on what's gone previously, haven't it? But that development, that progress, it feels to me as if we've almost packed in 2 years of progress into 4 months. You know, you look at the changeover in playing staff and the quality of the players that we've got, the coaches that they've brought in, even the improvements around the stadium with the stuff that's going on, the Jimmy Montgomery stand. This is a general feel of everything. It seems to me as if we've really just pressed fast forward on progress. And I would have been really happy being here in 2 years' time. But the fact that we're here 3.5 months after that, is incredible. How has it sort of felt to you, and how have you sort of looked at the progress that Sunderland have made, but also how we've approached this Premier League season? 'Cause I think it's caught some of us by surprise how they've really gone about things.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it has felt like time's been on fast forward, hasn't it? It has felt like the every day has seemed to cram in a week's worth of events. It has been incredible. I mean, I think, as you say, when we last spoke, and you said, do you think Sunderland will? I can't remember whether you asked me whether Sunderland would get into the playoffs or whether they would be promoted through the playoffs. I mean, my gut feeling was no. There was an awful lot of work to do, and you looked at the teams that they're competing against, and could Sunderland keep up and keep going as the pace that they had the rest of the season? And I think like you said, like Gav said, you have this inbuilt demon that says, it's a streak of pessimism, and it's not a pessimism that comes from nowhere. It comes from having seen so many false dawns in the past and seeing things go wrong. So that there's a real reason for it. And I said, well, my gut says that it won't happen. Although I'd love to be proved wrong. And, they have proved me wrong. I'll be the first to admit that, I was skeptical of the model when it first came in. I think, again, because you see so many false dawns, and I've certainly seen a lot over my time covering the club. In the end, you want to see deeds, not words. You want to see things actually work out and happen. And credit where credit's due. That's exactly what has happened, hasn't it? With Sunderland getting, out of League One, now out of the Championship, into the Premier League. And even then, people say, well, how much investment will there be? How much, will the club dig deep? Will the owners put the money in? And nobody can have complaints on that score. There's been big investment this summer. Sunderland signing players for £30 million, £20 million, whatever. I don't think many people saw that kind of future coming for Sunderland, but it has, and we saw the fruits of that yesterday. Now, yes, it's one game. It's be very easy to sit here and say, well, it's just one game. One swallow doesn't make a summer. 3 points down, 37 to go. And be like that. But let's not do that. Let's embrace the positivity. Let's look at what we saw yesterday and hope that that's the start of something big. I mean, there were 7 debutants in the side yesterday. I think that's the most Sunderland have ever had on an opening day. So 7 debutants in the starting lineup, and that's before you even look at Alderete coming off the bench as well. So 8 in total, but 7 in the starting lineup. And yes, of course, it's still a getting to know you exercise, and they're still gelling and still knitting together. So Sunderland fans can have absolute positivity that going forward in 2, 3, 4 games time, this team will get even better than what we saw yesterday.
I think it was such an important game to get a positive result from it. As Gav said, I think all of us wouldn't have been terribly disappointed if we got a point out of that. You go, get a point on the board, don't get turned over, and you go into the rest of the season. But to have that sort of performance, have that result with so many debutants, because no matter how much work you do on the training field and whatever you do in pre-season, those, I think Lebris said it after the game, those relationships and understandings on the field between the players aren't going to be there to the extent that they want them to be. And I think, when we looked at our transfer business, we went early with our transfer business because of this run of games that we have at the start of the season. I think that probably influenced them wanting to get players in early. So it really was, when you look at, this, again, it's one game, but this run of games that we've got to start the season with, it's almost like make or break. Because if we don't get a decent amount of points, I'm not talking getting 15 points out of 15, but getting a decent amount of points, it's going to be really important for the start of that season, and it can really set us off. But the flip could have happened, couldn't it? If we get beat on Saturday, you're going, oh shit, this is going to be hard. But Gav, 4 players in the starting lineup were here last season. There was only Trey Hume, Dan Ballard, Jensen Sills, who never actually started the game last season, and Eliza Mayenda. So, yeah, 7 debutants for players who were here last season. Did that surprise you at all, or was that kind of what you were expecting from the team?
No, that's exactly what I thought would happen. I think when we were looking ahead to the game through the week, the only real discrepancy I would say was will Sealt play or will Alderete play, but then the club late on Friday night released the embargoed press conference that's normally reserved for the written media and stuff, and put that on YouTube. And in that conversation, Regis Labrise had said Alderete wasn't quite ready to start. So you kind of knew Sealt would be starting the game. And I think we knew anyways because he played most of pre-season alongside Dan Ballard. I think generally, take his injury that he picked up in the game away from it. I think there's a kind of an expectation he would probably maybe get the first game, and then once we got a couple of defenders in, he would maybe be allowed to leave and go on loan somewhere. I don't know how serious his injury is, but he was certainly in place to start this one. Otherwise, no, I thought that was about right. I mean, you can't really argue with any of the selections, and I know you look at the lads who missed out. Chris Riggs not really played a lot of football in pre-season, although he played loads last season. He hasn't played a lot of pre-season, and to be honest, it would be hard to see where he fits into that midfield, given how much we've spent. Wilson Isidore, again, like Rigg, hasn't had much football in pre-season. He's had a little bit more than Rigg has, but he's still not played much in pre-season. Enzo Lafay was the big contentious one, wasn't it? Because if you think back to last weekend when the squad travelled to Germany, there was all that hoo-ha over, Enzo's not going to Germany and whatever else. But we were debating on the preview pod, and Chris actually thought Enzo would start. He thought he might play on the wing. But I didn't see that. I just thought he hasn't played them pre-season. It's probably not going to happen. And then obviously Patterson, again, in that embargoed press conference, I think he mentioned, didn't he, the manager, that Robin Roofs is unequivocally the number one. He very blunt. He said that. As soon as he said that, well, there we go. That's what's happening, isn't it? And then you look at some of the others. Dan Neil, you can see where his place in the team is at the minute. He's not going to be starting, certainly not at the start of the season. And then Patrick Roberts, I actually made a case for maybe starting him. I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad I'm not the manager, because I thought Shemzin Talbi was brilliant. But you can kind of go through that full bench. And those were lads who were so important to us last season. Yet you're looking at the team and the strength of it now, and you're like, you're going to have to do really well to get into that. But I think that's exactly what you want. And I think Dan Ballard, after the game, he talked about this. He was talking about, because he was asked a question like, what's it been like with so many new players? And he went, the lads are great. The new lads who've come in are brilliant characters. They're all digging in. They're all working hard. They all want to be a part of our team. And we've increased competition. And I think because there's a realisation within the squad that, for Sunderland to be able to not just survive in the Premier League, but actually win games of football and cope and maybe not struggle, we've had to do what we've done. We've had to go out and bring in really good quality footballers. And that means some people are just going to have to get on with it and think, you know what, I'm maybe going to have to fight for my place in the team. If you look at Dan Ballard, for instance, we've signed 2 centre-halves. There's a lad coming in who we haven't confirmed yet, who, for all intents and purposes, is there to try and take his shirt off him. So for the starting 11 that started the game yesterday, you're looking at it and you're going, that's probably the Sealt aside, that's the right balance. And I think when you come to the Burnley game next week, you're going to see Alderete coming in for Sealt, and that'll probably be the team for the foreseeable. Really, I can't see he doesn't change his mind much, Labrise, does he? So if we're doing well with a certain 11, I think that'll probably be the team for the next sort of 2 or 3 games at least. But for this one, that was exactly what I would have went with, and I think that's the most balanced, the most obvious starting 11 that we could have went with.
I think you can look through that whole team and the subs who came on, and you can wax lyrical about pretty much everybody who played yesterday. There was some brilliant performances and really, really strong performances, especially when, again, you're coming into a new team and those players haven't got those relationships and understanding and all that sort of stuff. But James, who stood out for you? Who were the players who impressed you yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot in the press room after the game. One of the questions that we were all asking, who was your man of the match? Who did you think? And we all agreed, that there were so many contenders, really. And people had different preferences. I thought Dan Ballard was outstanding. I thought he edged it because he was, imperious at the back. He had that fabulous clearance just in front of the goal line when it was needed in the first half, and then the goal itself. But you could make a case for any number of other players. I thought Alderete was excellent when he came on. I was really impressed with Siddiqui, the lad. I thought he was really impressive.
How good is he, by the way?
Of course.
How good is Siddiqui?
Diarra. Yeah, Siddiqui really impressed me. But in fact, all that midfield three, Xhaka, Siddiqui, and Diarra, I thought they were fabulous. They are some midfield three, to be honest. I mean, Mayenda was good. Adingra's pressing led directly to the corner, and then his cross in the second phase for the Ballard goal. There were so many contenders on the day. It was really, really impressive. But for me, if you ask me, if you twist my arm and ask me to make a choice, I'd say Dan Ballard, just because he had the two decisive moments, in each box.
He's really stepped up, hasn't he, Ballard? He wasn't in the team for most of last season. I think he started maybe 12 or 13 games last season, didn't he, in the league? And he came back in for the playoffs, and he's been outstanding. And anybody who's going to have a bloody fight to get his shirt off his back at the moment, because he's in such good form. But first half, Gav, it was quite an even first half. I think West Ham had spells of possession. We had a couple of chances on the break. Diarra had a chance that made the goalkeeper pull off a good save. How were you feeling about the first half?
You know me, really positive all the time. So when I was standing talking about when we mates at half time, I was definitely seeing the positives in it. I just thought we felt our way in the game. I thought we didn't. The main thing for me was we didn't look out of place. That was the main. I didn't want us to start the game and look shell shocked and look like Jesus Christ. This is a big difference to what we're used to. We didn't. We actually, I think with the experience we had on the field and the energy we had from the likes of Siddiqui and Diarra, even though we were feeling our way into the game, we didn't look fazed by because it could be very easy to get lost in that occasion, I think. From the minute the players turned up in Sunderland and there's like fans lining the streets and flares going off, that's going to get your heart racing, but it can also be daunting. You're kind of like, shit, the nerves kick in then. And when they were warming up, there must have been 35,000 in the stands ready to just cheer them to do the warm up, and they got a really big applause. Then there was the whole thing before the game with the wise men say and the just the fans getting right into it and the tifo. And I think when that's all going on, it does add to the sense of occasion, but also it can probably add to your nerves a little bit. And I think, if we're being honest, we probably started a little bit slow, but not too bad. There was that moment, what was it, 6 minutes in, when Rouf's had to make that save. And I think, Reggie Slabreeze said it in his post-match comments. He said West Ham started the game well, as they're probably the more experienced side. We were a little bit shy in the first half because we needed time to connect with this level. We made a lot of changes during pre-season, so we need time. It was a little bit better in the second half after we made some adjustments. So I think it was just that. We were just feeling our way into it. And once we kind of got used to that feeling and we had that chance to get in at half time to have that debrief and people just to take a breath and think about what was going to happen next, they were probably really happy that we just got through the half. We didn't really give up too much possession. We didn't give them a lot of chances. And really, there was a lot to hang on in terms of the positivity, because Diarra had the best chance of the half when that lovely little 1-2 he played with Mayenda. That gave us confidence. That was the sort of thing I was talking about half time. I was like, well, if you look at that, we've probably had the better chance, really. So, no, I was really happy with the first half. I just thought maybe we'd see, and this is a hallmark of Labrisse's Sunderland. They kick on in the second half. We don't tend to blow teams away in the first 45 minutes. If you generally look at the pattern of the majority of games under him, that's kind of how things go. We have like a quiet first half where we're quite conservative. And then his genius sort of kicks in later in games when you're making changes and subs and things like that. But no, I was really happy with the first half. I thought we played very well. And I thought, considering that was our first game back in the Premier League with a lot of new players, it's about what I expected, if I'm honest.
And James, from your perspective, like us, you've watched a lot of League One and Championship football over the past 8 seasons or so.
Too much.
A lot, far too much. But you're coming into the Premier League, and look, I think the Premier League's changed drastically since the last time we were up there. And even, West Ham, by their own admission, I think, didn't play terribly well in the second half. But even the speed of movement off the ball that they had, you can tell it's just a different level. It's a step up, can't you? And
Yeah.
I thought we coped with it pretty well. As Gav said, we kind of had to feel our way into the game to a large extent. But once we kind of got over those initial early stages, I thought we grew into the game in that first half and looked quite composed as the half went on.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, as you said, West Ham are a side that are always in sort of or seem to be always in kind of bottom third of the Premier League for most of the season. There's always a question mark as to how they're going to do. But there were times when they just showed a flash of skill, or they just turned something on. The move that led to the clearance from Dan Ballard, just a really slick first time passing move, and you thought, yeah, okay, when they want to, they can turn it on. They had Jared Bowen, everything positive that they did came through him, particularly in the first half. They've got skillful players, and on their day they can cause any team problems. But I did think that Sunderland dealt with it really, really well. I just made a few notes sitting there yesterday, and Sunderland didn't look overawed. They didn't look out of place. They were seemed comfortable in the game, and even in that first half, there wasn't much in it in that first half. There was a decent chance at each end. But Sunderland didn't look overawed, and you have to bear in mind that this was a Sunderland side with 7 debutants, and only 2 players with any Premier League experience whatsoever, being Xhaka and Adingra. There were other players in there who had top-level European experience. You got the likes of Diarra that's played in the top division in France, and Renil, Mandeva, can't even think of his name, that's played down at Atletico Madrid, played in top level in Spain. So they've got top level experience in the top leagues in Europe, but only 2 in the Premier League. So to come into that first game with a side that's full of new arrivals, and to look so comfortable so quickly, I thought really bodes well for the future. And as I've said right at the start, they will get better as time goes on, and as they knit together, and as they get to work each other's games out, and they get more settled in the squad, and as the players around them that haven't, the likes of Trey Hume that we know, solid, good player, as he becomes more comfortable in the Premier League as a unit, they'll get better. But there were so many positive signs yesterday. We know that they're going to be tough days to come. We know that. It's not going to be all sweetness and light between here and next May. But let's not worry too much about that until it comes upon us. It was great yesterday, and Sunderland fans have got every right to celebrate this weekend, and for the rest of this week, and hopefully for as long as possible.
I've been listening to all sorts of Premier League prediction podcasts and watching stuff on YouTube over the past couple of weeks, and even I was listening to the Athletics podcast when they were looking at the bottom half of the table, or what they thought would be the bottom half of the table, and everybody said we'll go down because we haven't got the players to stay up. And I think their rationale was we didn't score too many goals last season, so unlike Leeds, we're not going to score too many. We conceded a few, so if you compare us to Burnley has a really good defensive record. And I just think, from our perspective, we've got so many new players, it's actually impossible to say how Sunderland are going to do. But our setup, I think, is far more suited to the Premier League. We've got a manager who's really pragmatic in his approach. He's not an idealist like, perhaps Russell Martin was with Southampton last year, or Vincent Kompany was the year before. He's not going to go and try to play really expansive football and outplay everybody. But we've got a really strong style of play that, I think we actually saw the best of yesterday, because, we're at our best when we have that high press, we close people down at the top end, but we look on the counter-attack to be really dangerous as well. And I think if you have a look at the all the stats from the game, I think we had 37% possession or stuff like that. And I think typically last season, that sort of possession was where we were at our best. We soaked a bit up, but it wasn't purely defensive. We were comfortable to allow the other team to have the ball. And Gav, the interesting thing, I think, from that game yesterday as well, West Ham played with 5 at the back. And last season, we struggled against teams who played wing backs. That was the one thing that you could kind of go, if you want to play against Sunderland last season, play wing backs, because they seem to cause us problems. But I thought we dealt with it so well. And it seems so impressive to me that in such a short space of time, Labris has got the new players playing in the same system, but they look as if they've been doing it for months, not just weeks.
Yeah. Well, I said to my mates when we were 1-0 up at the game, I said, look, no matter how this game goes from this point, look how well coached we are. Like, unbelievable. You're looking at the shape of the team in and out of possession. I'm like, we are so well coached, so organised, so well drilled. And just on what you said about last season, I almost think that's got no real relevance to this, because we see so many teams come up from the Championship having blown away the majority of the teams in the Championship and then can't adapt to the Premier League. And it's, for a multitude of reasons. You mentioned a couple of teams there when, you think of Southampton and Company's Burnley side. Well, they try to carry on doing the things that got them promoted, but the things that got them promoted were never going to work in the Premier League, because Burnley are not going to play the likes of anyone really off the park. You have to almost accept that you aren't going to have a lot of the ball, and then you build a squad that suits that style. And you think, if you look at the you look at the team we've built, particularly this season, compared to last season, I actually thought last season, despite how well we did, I thought that at times, particularly when we played teams with a back 5, the midfield was too powder puff and we got run all over at times. I can remember it was actually the season before last when Alex Neil brought Stoke to the Stadium of Light and they battered us. And they played a midfield.
That was ages ago. Yeah, it was under Mowbray.
It was under Mowbray. Sorry, that's right. It was a season before last, anyways. I think when we played like a midfield 2 of, I think it was Ekwa and Neil. I might be wrong, but they played a midfield 3 of players who technically were not as good as what we had, but they were just big lads, and we physically couldn't cope. And that always sticks in my mind when I think about the Sunderland teams. I think actually, sometimes it's just about being more competitive and stronger than the other team. And when you look at the players we've recruited, you look at Siddiqui and Diarra, who are just pests. I love watching them yesterday. They just never stopped. Siddiqui seemed to be everywhere. And they never gave West Ham a moment to breathe. And then behind them, you had Granit Xhaka dictating things. And for me, Granit Xhaka is a world-class footballer. He's proven it for years that he's a top-level midfield player. So you surround him with the legs of Siddiqui and Diarra, you're almost saying to teams, you're not going to cope with us physically. You're going to have to try and play through us. And we saw the tactic yesterday. To me, felt like if you looked at their back 5, they had 3 big lads at the back. And I said this on the reaction pod. If you play a back 3, you're almost saying, your defence isn't good enough to play a 2. So you're sort of making up for something you're lacking, and you're going with a back 3. I don't think if you've got 2 really solid centre halves that you would go with a back 3. I think a back 3 is normally employed to mask a weakness in the team, and their weakness is the mobility at the back. So we were humping the ball long. We knew they would win all the headers. We weren't humping it to my end to say you're going to win those headers. We were humping it long over the top, hoping they would then nod the ball back. But then we had Siddiqui and Diarra waiting to win the second balls.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be an important tactic this season in the Premier League, is that when we go into games, 9 times out of 10, we are going to play teams who are going to have more of the ball than us. So specifically, we've just gone out and bought players who can play a style of football that suits that, And that doesn't happen very often in the Premier League with newly promoted teams. They tend to go out and sign players just to add to what they already have. And we've not done that. And you can see from the way we played yesterday that that's probably going to be the style all season. It was kind of the style last season too. It was the style that got us promoted. There was a momentous shift, in my opinion, from the team that finished 16th, which played possession-based football and didn't do it very well in the Championship, to basically the same group of players under Labris, completely changing the style of football and getting promoted. And you've got to think that that's going to be the case this year. We're going to be quite happy to to give up the ball and let teams come on to us, really. But then you go out and spend hundreds of millions on players who can cope with that. So I like that style of play, though. I think when we talk about culture and the style of football that Sunderland fans enjoy watching, I think we like to see like that. We like to see players winning tackles and winning second balls and counter-attacking with pace. I think that's us. I think when you think of an identity and you think of like what Sunderland is and what the kind of football that our fans really enjoy, it's that. And it was nice to see us doing it really well yesterday. I'm hoping that's going to be the case for the foreseeable, and we actually, we keep this up and we pick up a few more wins in the next few weeks, but we'll see.
And yesterday, obviously, was Granit Xhaka's debut. He was one of the 7 debutants, walked out as captain. And look, performance-wise, I thought he did well. I thought he passed the ball pretty well and he got tackles. But his leadership, and he was, instructing people where to be. And he was, what's the lad, the Brazilian international, is it Paqueta?
Lucas Paqueta, yeah.
Paqueta. He was on him all the time, and he was niggling away at him, and he just did not let him turn, did not let him get on the ball. And like that experience and know-how from him is going to be worth so much, James, this season. I think Lebris even spoke after the game about Xhaka speaking in the dressing room after the game about the need for togetherness, and we're going to win together and lose together and defend together and attack together. And he's obviously taken a pretty influential role at the club already.
Yeah, he has. He was so impressive in that role, and things have knock-on effects. So obviously, Paquetá wants to play in the number 10 position and finds himself blocked off by Xhaka, and he can't influence the game from there. So he ends up dropping deep and collecting the ball, just in front of West Ham's back line. And that's where he got pressured by Adingra, and they win the corner. And from the second phase, from that, Ballard's goal comes. So it's because Paqueta gets forced backwards, if you like, that it ends up ultimately, a few stages down the line with Sunderland scoring the second goal. So it's smart play, as you say. He's a more senior player. He's been around for quite a while as Xhaka. So you end up playing with your head and a bit of nous more. You need other people to do the majority of the running for you, and Sunderland have got that, or got players with those legs, to do that around him, which lets Xhaka dictate the play and organise things from a deeper role. And he did that absolutely brilliantly. There were so many reasons to be positive, I thought, from the whole performance yesterday. And Gav was just saying there about the teams that have struggled in the Premier League. And if you look at companies, Burnley or Southampton under Russell Martin, these are teams that dropped out of the Premier League because they weren't good enough. They come into the Championship, and in the Championship, they are the football team. They are, a cut above Leicester being another one last season. They're a cut above the rest of them. They do really well. But then those managers are so dogmatic that they don't change when they go up to the Premier League, and they end up doing in the Premier League exactly what got them relegated previously. And no surprise, they wind up struggling yet again. How many times did Southampton try and play the ball out from the back last season, and get caught again and again? It became, it was almost a weekly feature in Match of the Day. What's the goal Southampton have given away this week from playing the ball out from the back? And I don't think that Regis Lebris will do that. I'm not saying that Sunderland are never going to get caught. Every team gets caught from time to time, even the very best teams in the Premier League. But he won't just keep doing the same thing as it fails again and again and again. He'll adapt and adjust and and evolve, and you need to do that in the Premier League. You can't be too dogmatic and stuck in your ways. You do have to show some flexibility, and he certainly showed that. He showed that last season, Lebris, in the Championship, and I'm sure he'll do the same in the Premier League. You do have to be able to think on your feet and say, right, okay, this isn't working, we've got to do something different. Not just say, no, I'm doing this, this is the way I play and I'm going to do it, and come what may. So yeah, I mean, it was such a good performance all around, and I think that Sunderland are gonna the route to success for Sunderland is to be the hard-working team, to work harder than anybody else, to close down, to press, to shut down. Yeah, there's going to be games when that won't work. There's going to be teams that are just too good that are going to be able to play around you, like a Man City, for instance, or a Liverpool. They are good enough to play around, all except the very best pressing teams. But for most of the teams in the league, or at least for enough teams in the league, you've got to make sure that you're competitive against them to give yourself a chance to get the points that you need to stay in that Premier League. And that is the name of the game this season. And Sunderland have got off to a great start. What you didn't want is, I think last season, it was about October before any of the newly promoted teams won a game. You don't want that, hanging over you week by week. When are you going to get that first win? Will it be this week? Are you going to get that first win? Sunderland have got it at the first attempt, and that lifts some of the pressure. It lifts the spirits of the fans, and it's lifted some of the pressure on the team. They now know that they can do it in this division. They're capable of winning matches in this division, and now it's a case of how many can you win.
Well, I think the game changed on 53 minutes. Jensen Silt goes down, gets some treatment, he goes off, comes back on, he goes straight back down. And Alderete comes on for his debut to make it 8 debutants on the field. And if somebody said to you, a centre-back's going to come on and be the game changer from an attacking perspective, you wouldn't have believed it, would you? But Gav, how was that for a cameo performance from your new signing?
It was almost like Stan Varga against Arsenal, wasn't it? It was... He was, look, that's what you pay big money for. I keep saying this to people because my mates are like going, oh, what about talking about a Dingra's cross for the Ballard goal and talking about, just the performances of Siddiqui and Diar. That's why you've spent that money. Roofs and goal, just doing the basics well. We paid, 13 million for him. Yeah, that's why you pay that money, That's why you go out and buy quality footballers. And Alderete, for me, I mean, within, what was he on the pitch? 90 seconds, and he's doing a Cruyff turn inside the box.
It could have gone badly wrong, couldn't it? 0-0 doing a Cruyff turn inside your own box. It could be a completely different story.
Yeah, but to be honest, he's an experienced footballer, so he's not a kid coming into this. So he just walked out onto the pitch like he'd already played 200 games for us. He was, he looks like he's got a bit of everything about him, doesn't he? But what I liked most was, I don't know if you've seen there was a stat kicking around this morning about Nicholas Füllkrug. I don't know if you've seen it, but it said Füllkrug lost 16 out of 19 duels in the match versus Sunderland, the single most by any player in Europe's top 5 leagues since 2023-24. Now, I mean, Ballard's got a lot to do with that because Ballard was on the pitch the full game, but Alderete's got a lot to do with that too. I think they never got a sniff. Every time they pumped it forward, the 2 big lads at the back won absolutely everything. And we're going to love him because he's a great. There was a couple of times as well where he just, he raked his studs down the back of someone's Achilles. He whacked them as the clearance came in, and that style of defending, which we've actually we've come to admire from Trey Hume in particular. Trey Hume's very good at doing that, where he gets the right balance between aggression and fair. The referee can't really argue because he's won the ball. I think Alderete is going to be that kind of defender for us, and I think fans are going to really love him. We love defenders like that who just hard. He looks hard, doesn't he? But it was amazing to see him pop up where he did to put the ball in for Mienda's goal. It was an unbelievable cross, by the way. Absolutely excellent. And just as a wider point, you do need balance all over the pitch. You need a left-sided centre-half who's got a left foot, and you need a right-sided centre-half who's got a right foot. And, fair play to Jensen Silt, he actually did okay, I thought, but he's not left-footed. You would never get that kind of moment from a Jensen Silt, maybe because he doesn't have the quality, but also you're asking a right-footer to play a left centre-half, and that's why the club go out and recruit players specifically. We need a left-footed centre-half to play left centre-half, because there will be times when you need a naturally left-sided player to contribute. I mean, we're not going to probably see him pop up with 5 or 6 assists this season like that. But it was a glimpse, wasn't it? It was a glimpse of the quality that he's got. Like I say, an experienced player, Paraguay international. He was in the La Liga team of the season last year. So you've got to be half decent to earn that kind of recognition. And if this is Alderete having barely kicked the ball in pre-season, just walked through the door a week ago, I'm really excited to see what else he can do. Looks a good find, doesn't he? And I'd never heard of him before he was linked with us, but I know naught about European football, so I'm glad we've got people on the recruitment staff that do, because we're going to pick up these gems, the likes of Alderete, who I think we're going to love. We're going to really. I just think he's the perfect Sunderland defender from what I've seen already in terms of the aggression, the passion, and the quality. The quality is the main thing. He's got to be able to come up with the goods in the Premier League.
No, I was so impressed with him. It's funny you mentioned Stan Varga, because in our On This Week podcast, which will go out tomorrow, we talk about Stan Varga's debut against Arsenal and question whether it was as good as folklore would have you believe, and we did come to the conclusion that it was. So, Alderete kind of brought back memories of that, but it was great to see Mayenda getting the score sheet, James, somebody from last season who scored in the playoff semi and the final, starting the new season in a new division with a goal. It'll do him the world of good.
Yeah, fantastic. Obviously, that's always the hardest part of the game, scoring at any level, but in Premier League in particular, when you're a young player that's coming into a new league, and of course there's a question mark against you. Are you going to get goals at this new level? And to answer that on your very first appearance, is just a perfect start for you. It was noticeable. Graham Potter was pretty unhappy with his side in the post match, as you'd expect. Kept repeating again and again that his side didn't do the basics right, but he took a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of a backhanded dig at Mayenda, where he was saying, with all due respect, it's not Niall Quinn you're up against. He was talking about that first goal. And it was all you could do to sort of say, and with all due respect, it was hardly Bobby Moore he was playing against either, was it? But he was up against their sort of £30 million Moroccan defender in that particular aerial duel, wasn't he? A go-ahead, I think you'd say. He had no right to score from there, did he? He was nearly on the penalty spot. So there were all kinds of questions for West Ham to answer from there. To have a header that bounces before it finds the corner of the net. But what a great start for Mayenda, and also his work rate throughout the game. Not just a goal, but his work rate throughout the game, getting down the channels and putting balls across.
It's the exemplification of hard work trumping quality sometimes, Like Mayenda, for me, I love Eliza Mayenda, but he wanted that ball more than Agued did. And then you look at some of the other goals, I think we just wanted it a bit more. We went around the pitch before, pointing out kind of the standard of the player that West Ham had in their team, the money they've spent, Rodriguez, who came off, I didn't realise he's got 30 caps for Argentina. He got nowhere near us. Paquetá, Brazil international, got nowhere near us. Todibo, I think it is, he was terrible. They paid an absolute fortune for him. So, this gives me a lot of hope for the season ahead, because if we can, it's going to be difficult to maintain that level of, energy and aggression. When you're playing 38 games in the season, you're going to pick up injuries. We're going to have weeks where we have 3 games in a week, and it's just going to be tough to keep up that sort of tempo. But honestly, if we can keep up that type of tempo and can show the level of just wanting it as much as we did, like Mayenda did to win his header, you're going to have half a chance of staying in the Premier League and doing all right. Because some of these teams have got a lot of quality, but they maybe just don't want it as much as we do. And I think Mayenda showed that with the determination that he showed to win the header and score the goal. It was a fantastic. I didn't realise in my seat how good that header was. I actually thought, I think the keeper could have probably done better. But then when you watch, I watched on Match of the Day last night, it was a bit more of a close-up of the way, sort of the angle the ball took. and their keeper really had to try and stretch to get to it, and he got nowhere near it. It was actually a really, really good header. But again, I just think I think Mayenda in that instance, even though the defender had probably half a foot on him, he just wanted it more. And that was a big reason why we won the game in the end, to be honest. It was our players wanting it more, and Mayenda kicked that process off really with a really good goal.
But it's that desire combined with quality, isn't it? That's the thing. We ooze quality in certain, well, actually all over the field we ooze quality yesterday. And, it's that combined with the desire to go forward and actually try to attack. And one thing in the build-up to the second goal really stood out for me with respect to that. And I think the original corner got cleared and Adingra came back and he passed it back to Mandava. And I think a different player there would have passed it back to the other centre-back, or took it back, or maybe rolled it back to the goalkeeper or something. But he took it and drove into space to then give it back to Adingra to cross it in. And it was that determination to keep going forward and keep the pressure on that, that made the difference for that second goal. And, brilliant cross by Adingra, fantastic header by Ballard. And again, if you're writing storylines, for Ballard to score another header in that end, in his first game back at the Stadium of Light after the Coventry semi, brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it was excellent the way Sunderland closed out the game, because how many times have we seen in the past Sunderland are 1-0 up at home and they start to go into their shell a little bit and try and hang on to what they've got rather than keep going. And I think if you do that, it's a long 20 minutes. But they kept coming forward from that set piece, as you say, put the ball in, and suddenly you're 2-0 up, and all of a sudden the pressure lifts to an extent. You're in a much more commanding position, and you can and you keep going, and people are not, the nerves aren't jangling so much. You've got a little bit of a cushion all of a sudden. So that made such a difference in the context of the game. And then right up to the end with Isidore adding the third, that now seems to be a Sunderland trademark, doesn't it? Attacking from the other team's corner, going the length of the field. Did it a couple of times last season, 2 or 3 times last season. And, again, Sunderland have been caught out that way so many times over the year. There have been times when Sunderland have won corners and then wound up conceding goals. And now Sunderland are doing that to other teams. And it's such a refreshing thing to see when you've got genuine pace in your side and players that are, full of running and are direct and go straight at goal. The goalkeeper made a hash of it, but you've got to be there. You've got to run the length of the field and have the shot to force the mistake from the keeper.
Of course, we conceded like that in the playoff final, didn't we? From our own corner.
Of course,
so it happens to us as well. But again, that goal from Isidore, like Alderete won the ball, and he actually, rather than just booting it clear, which would have been dead easy to do, and probably managers would have told him to boot it into the crowd at that point of the game, but he played the ball in, and Isidore goes down the flank and seals the win. But it's important, isn't it, to have a look at West Ham as well, because I was really disappointed in how they responded after they went to goal down. Like, if I was a West Ham fan, I think they played all right until we scored. But once we scored, they did nothing. They didn't look as if they had any desire or heart to get back into the game. And is it a case that they were bad and we've just made the most of it, or am I kind of over-exaggerating that, you think, Gav?
Again, as I said before, I think we just wanted it more than they did, which I would be worried if I was a West Ham fan watching that. Yes, we're newly promoted. We've waited 8 years for this moment. We were always going to be up for it. But it's not like West Ham didn't have time to prepare for that. They knew they were playing Sunderland 6 weeks ago. So they had 6 weeks to get their heads around that this was going to be a big day for us. They didn't want it as much as we did. They never showed the quality that they had on the pitch. And I said this on the reaction pod, that actually, if you look at the changes they made when they were trying to get back into the game, and the team that started the match, they've got no pace. They've got absolutely no pace on the pitch. So no matter how much quality they've got individually, you need pace and power in the Premier League. That's why we've gone out and signed the players we've got, because we understand that to compete, you're going to need legs, you're going to need big athletes, you're going to need pace on the pitch. I looked at West Ham and they just didn't have that anywhere on the pitch at all. And I'd be really, really worried if I was a West Ham fan. I would be looking at that and thinking, we're in for a long season if it carries on along those lines, because they're not. I don't think they've had much of a summer, really. They've signed a couple of players, but they've not really done too much in the transfer market. They lost Kudus to Tottenham, who was their power and pace. He was their best player, and he's gone to Tottenham. And there's probably, like, when we've been trying to make our predictions for the season ahead, we've been trying to like work out what teams might actually struggle. There might be a couple of teams down there who are in competition with ourselves and the other promoted sides in terms of trying to stay in the Premier League. I know it's one game, but I could see West Ham being one of those teams. I mean, I can see them definitely finishing south of 13th, 14th this season. They're not going to be one of the better sides in the Prem. So, yeah, I mean, you said you were disappointed from what you saw. I mean, I wasn't. I loved it. I was over the moon that West Ham didn't kind of rise to the occasion. And look, there will be other teams come to the Stadium of Light under similar circumstances, and will, because there's so much quality in the Premier League. You know, teams who are used to going behind and finding ways to get back into games. But I was really, really happy that they decided not to turn up. And for the first game of the season, that's unacceptable, really. I mean, you won't have seen this on the TV cameras, Martin, but I was at the other end of the ground, so I can see into the North Stand upper. And when that third goal went in, the end just emptied. They were really, really unhappy, the West Ham fans. They'd sold out that full end, and it was practically empty by full time. And the ones who stayed in their seats were berating the West Ham fans. The players went over to clap the fans, as they should, and they were getting absolutely slaughtered, and rightly so, because they just them West Ham fans have paid an awful lot of money to go all that way to Sunderland to be there to support their team, and they didn't want it as much as us. And I think that's is that not one of the biggest sort of criticisms you can pay a team? Is that you just didn't want it? I genuinely think they didn't.
No, I think you're right. For clarity, I wasn't disappointed that West Ham didn't come back. I was disappointed in them as a team. Thank you very much.
Not angry, just disappointed. You're not angry with them, just disappointed.
That's right. No, I would hope for more from them, but I didn't want more from them. I was really pleased to see Isidore get that goal. Like I think he's probably been a little bit forgotten about when we're talking about players who can really step up, because of the I think the last 2 or 3 months of the season he wasn't really firing. But he said in an interview after one of the pre-season friendlies that he'd had a load of personal issues in the last couple of months of the season. I think he had a new baby as well and all that sort of stuff. And I think, if you look at the Wilson Isidore that we saw for the first 4 or 5 months he was here, that's a Premier League player. And I was so happy for him to come on and get that goal. And also for Lefay to come on. Obviously, we've had some chat about Lefay. And, I would love to figure out a way to get him in the team, because I just love watching him play football. But for him to come on, show quality, show desire, Isidore to come on, show the same. James augurs well for the rest of the season, doesn't it? I said one swallow doesn't make a summer, all that sort of stuff. We have to enjoy the moment, but it sets us up well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like you say about Lefay, I mean, I think that a player like Enzo Lefay, who's as skillful as him, will flourish in the Premier League. I think it's probably harder for him in the Championship, where you're under pressure or on the ball all the time. You do get a little bit more time to express yourself in the Premier League, and so I think that he will sort of come into his own, quite where he'll fit in, because that midfield three, as we've been discussing today, is so good. I'm not sure, but to have a player like Enzo Lefay that can come into that midfield three and give you a slightly more attacking flavour, or he's got so many different options now as Lebris. He can tinker with that, and if you're talking about calling on a player like Dan Neil so it looks based on yesterday almost a backup player. I mean, wow, what a great sign of the depth that you've got when you've got players like Dan Neil that you can bring in there, or in the event of an injury or whatever it might be. I mean, what a testament to the recruitment this summer. It's been terrific, and I'm really looking forward to see how that all works out. I mean, Gav was saying there about West Ham. What do you think about West Ham? I mean, I think they are going to struggle. I mean, they're probably of all the teams in the Premier League, they are probably the ones that are as much hit and miss as anybody. You catch them on the wrong day and they can beat you quite easily. But equally, you can catch them on the right day or your right day and beat them, and that's what it was for Sunderland. I mean, they always say that you can get turned over by a newly promoted team on the opening day because you're surprised and you're taken by surprise, and maybe there's a slight element of that. But that's not Sunderland's problem. Sunderland just have to pick up the points, put in the performance, pick up the points, beat what's in front of them. They've got another great opportunity next weekend, with Burnley. I think, get the points on the board as quickly as you can. Don't be hanging about. Get as much as you can as quickly as you can, and don't look too much into it as to whether you deserve it or whether you've caught teams on the hop or whether they don't want it as much as you do. To hell with all that. Just get the points and worry about all that later.
Exactly. And I think that is the perfect place to leave it for today. So thank you, Gav. Thank you, James. Always appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for listening. As usual, we've got podcasts coming at you all day, every day. Tomorrow morning, we'll have another episode run this week. And on Tuesday morning, you will hear Chris and me talking to Ian Murter about the weekend that has just been and looking ahead to the Burnley game next Saturday. So until then, have an absolutely magnificent Sunday. Enjoy Sunderland being well and truly back in the Premier League. Bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.